Now, typically, when you're trying to introduce curvature into a path outline in Illustrator, you need not only anchor points, as we've seen so far, but you also need control handles. However, I'm going to start things off by showing you a no control handle method. It's what I call faking a spline curve. And if you've ever heard of spline curves, great. You should feel right at home. If you haven't, they allow you to create curved path outlines using anchor points only. The upside is they're easy to create. The downside is because you don't have control handles, you don't have nearly as much control. I've saved my progress as allspikescomplete.ai. And I'm going to start things off by turning off the teeth and spikes layer here inside the layers panel. And then I'm going to click on the face layer to make it active. And what we're going to be doing here is tracing around the crocodile's green face. But first I want to give you a sense of where we're going. So I'm going to click and hold on the occupant of the shape tool. And I'm going to select the star tool from the flyout menu. And then I'll just go ahead and draw your typical everyday average 5-pointed star and move it into a location that looks good for now. And then release. And in my case, I end up with this red star, as you can see, because the last shape that I was working with was red with no stroke. You may see different colors, doesn't matter. Now, as you can see, this 5-pointed star is made up of a total of 10 anchor points. They're all what is known as corner points. They have no control handles, and therefore we have 10 anchor points connected by 10 straight segments. The simplest way to curve these segments is to go up to the Effect menu, choose Stylize, and then choose Round Corners. The default setting is a radius of 10 points. You'll need to turn on the Preview checkbox in order to see what's going on, at which point you can actually see those corners bending. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this value up by pressing Shift Up arrow. So now I have a radius value of 20 points. And what I want you to notice is that the corners are always rounding away from the anchor point. So if the anchor point is going outward, as is true of the spikes associated with the star, then the rounding is going to go inward. If the anchor point is bending inward, as in the case of these interior 5 points here, then the rounding will go outward. So it's basically occurring in the opposite direction of the anchor point. That's just something to bear in mind. All right, I'm going to cancel out of here. And I'll also press the backspace key or the delete key on a Mac in order to get rid of that shape. And now let's go ahead and trace around the creature's head using the pen tool, because that's going to be the easiest tool for our purposes. Again, you can get that tool by pressing the P key. We're going to start right here. So we've got an open path outline. That starts right here under the creature's nose, goes down around its lips to the chin, which we can't see right now, back up the jaw, and around the nostril, like so. So I'll go ahead and click to set a point at this location, and now notice that my pen tool cursor doesn't have any symbol next to it. So we've got an active path outline in the works. I'll go ahead and click right about there, bearing in mind, of course, that as soon as I round off this polygon, it's going to round inward. And then I'll click right about there. We're going to be drawing the lips on top of the face shape, so we don't have to be all that careful around this location, and we want a nice amount of overlap. Now, this fill is really getting in my way here, so I'm going to turn my fill off and give the path a stroke. Unfortunately, I can't see the fill and stroke icons up here in the control panel, and that's because you only see those swatches when every point in the path is selected. So what I'll need to do is drop down to the bottom of the toolbox. Note here that my stroke icon is active. It's the one in the foreground. So I'll go ahead and switch over to my stroke panel on the far right side of the screen. If you can't see it on your screen, then go to the window menu and choose the stroke command. However, in my case, it's available. So I'll go ahead and click on this down pointing arrowhead next to the weight value and change it to 3 points. Next, I'll go ahead and click on this red stroke swatch here inside the toolbox in order to make it active. And I'll change it to none by clicking on this little none icon. And you can see that it has a keyboard shortcut of slash because after all, it looks like a slash. All right, now I'm going to continue drawing my path. Again, no symbol next to the pen tool cursor. So I've got an active path outline. And I'll just click around here like so. I'll go ahead and spacebar drag up so that I can see the bottom portion of this artwork. And that might be a little bit too much of an approximation there. So I need to go ahead and add an anchor point at a location. I think I'll put one right about there. Actually, should work out nicely. And I'll press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac in order to get my last used arrow tool. Happens to be the black arrow, which is not what I want. So I'm going to press Control tilde here on the PC, that keyboard shortcut that I added to the software. You Macintosh people would press Command Option Tab in order to switch from black to white arrow. And I'll go ahead and drag that point down a little bit. I might Control drag or Command drag this point over a little bit as well. Then as soon as I release the Control key, I'm back to the pen tool. I still have an active path outline, so I'll click right about there and here. And now I need to exert a little bit of care because this area will be exposed. We're not going to have another path outline on top of the jaw, for example. And notice that I've clipped into the shape outline there. In other words, the curve should go out along here. I want to make sure my points are always outside of that curve because the rounding is going to occur inward. So I need to Control drag this guy out a bit, possibly Control drag this guy down a bit as well. And that would be a Command drag on the Mac. I still have an active path outline, so I can continue drawing. Now the eye shapes are going to occur on top of this green shape, so I can go ahead and click around like so. And this area is exposed, so I need to be careful up here. And this guy actually wants to be a little farther up, so I'll go ahead and Control drag or Command drag him. Click there, click around the nostril like so. Click back around. I want to make sure these points are on top of each other, so I'm going to have to nudge this guy up a little bit. In other words, this outline right here, this segment, needs to exactly cross over this point. And then I'll click up and around here, like so, because I want to give a little more curvature to the nostril. So that looks good as a primitive base freeform polygon. In the next movie, we'll turn the path into a smooth curve by rounding off the corners, and then we'll adjust the outline to taste.